Here's something no security company will tell you. The households that held during Katrina, during the Puerto Rico blackout, during the 2021 Texas freeze, they weren't the ones with the most expensive systems. They were the ones with layers. 5 specific, sequential, deliberately ordered layers that cost less combined than a single month of ADT monitoring. Most people think home defense means one thing: a weapon, a camera, a lock. That's not a system. That's a single point of failure waiting for the right crisis to expose it. The $300 system exists. It's documented. And almost nobody has built it correctly. Most people, when they think about home defense, think about a single thing: a gun in the nightstand, a camera on the porch, a reinforced deadbolt on the front door. One object, one solution, one line of protection between their family and whatever comes next. That instinct is understandable. It's also exactly wrong. And the evidence for why it's wrong isn't theoretical. It's documented, city by city, crisis by crisis, in the after-action reports that emergency management agencies file after every major American disaster of the last 3 decades. Here's what those reports consistently show. In the first 24 hours of a grid-down event, a sustained power outage, a civil disturbance, a major storm that severs normal supply chains, households with single-point defense systems face a specific and predictable failure. The camera stops transmitting when the Wi-Fi goes down. The alarm goes silent when the backup battery drains. The smart lock reverts to manual when the app loses signal. Everything that depended on the infrastructure fails at exactly the moment the infrastructure fails. And the households that spent the most on integrated, connected, subscription-based systems are often the most exposed, because they built their entire sense of security around a single layer that the crisis itself dissolved. This is not a fringe observation. FEMA's own post-Katrina analysis documented that households in the most heavily surveilled neighborhoods of New Orleans, areas with active camera systems and professional monitoring contracts, experienced comparable rates of property crime to households with no technology at all, once the power grid went down and monitoring companies lost contact. The cameras were there. The footage wasn't being watched. The alarm was chirping into nothing. The deterrence had evaporated. What held? In the neighborhoods that held was something different, something layered, something that didn't depend on any single system staying operational. The 5-layer framework that crisis researchers have identified isn't new. It's been reconstructed, independently, from behavioral analysis of multiple sustained crisis events. Katrina in 2005, the Puerto Rico blackout in 2017, the Texas freeze in 2021, and smaller regional events that rarely make national coverage but generate detailed local documentation. In each case, the households that maintained security, maintained normalcy, and were not approached by opportunistic threats had built, consciously or not, the same 5-layer structure: detection, delay, signaling, communication, community, in that order. Each layer performs a distinct function. Each layer is effective even when every layer above or below it fails, and together, all 5 cost less than $300 to build from scratch. That number is not a budget compromise. It's the result of a specific logic. Below a certain threshold of spending, each additional dollar of investment produces large gains in household security. Above that threshold, returns diminish sharply. A $3,000 integrated smart system provides roughly the same deterrent effect as a $300 layered system in a sustained crisis, because in a sustained crisis, the $3,000 system becomes unreliable while the $300 system, built deliberately around infrastructure independence, continues functioning. The $300 figure represents the point where you have covered all 5 layers adequately. Beyond it, you're buying redundancy in the wrong places. Or you're buying convenience features that matter in normal life and disappear in the scenarios where this system actually earns its cost. Let's be specific about what the 5 layers are in structural terms before we build each one. Layer 1 is detection, the capacity to know that something is wrong before it reaches your door. Layer 2 is delay, physical hardening that adds time between a threat and a breach, because time is what allows every other layer to function. Layer 3 is signaling, visible, legible communication to anyone approaching that this household is prepared, aware, and not the easiest target available. Layer 4 is communication, the ability to send and receive information when normal networks are unavailable. Because in every documented crisis, information asymmetry is as dangerous as physical vulnerability. And Layer 5 is community, the network of trusted neighbors and local relationships that functions as a distributed early warning and mutual support system. The layer that crisis researchers consistently rate as the highest leverage intervention and that almost nobody builds deliberately. Each layer is independent. Each layer works in the dark, in the rain, without Wi-Fi, without power, without any assumption that the normal infrastructure is still operating. And each layer is buildable for a specific dollar amount that will track precisely as we go. Before we build any of it, though, consider what the alternative looks like. It's hour 48 of a sustained grid-down event in a mid-sized American city. The power has been out since the first night. Gas stations closed at hour 6 when their point-of-sale systems went offline. Grocery stores locked their doors at hour 12. By hour 36, the social contract that makes cities function, the invisible agreement that everyone operates within normal parameters, has started to fray at the edges. Not everywhere, not catastrophically, but in the pockets where it frays, the households that had no detection layer don't know someone is in their yard until they hear glass. The households that had no delay layer discover that a standard residential door frame fails in under 8 seconds under focused pressure. The households that had no signaling layer look identical to every other household on the street. And identical means undifferentiated. And undifferentiated means the selection process that opportunistic threats use comes down to proximity and convenience. None of these households did anything wrong in normal life. They just never built a system for the life that a crisis creates. The 5 layers exist precisely for that 48-hour window, and for everything that comes after it. Let's build them. Layer 1 is detection. The function is simple. You need to know that something is wrong before it reaches your door. Not after. Not when you hear a sound inside the house. Before. Early warning is the force multiplier that makes every other layer more effective, because every layer after this one requires time to activate, and time is exactly what detection buys you. The tools for this layer are not complicated, and they don't require Wi-Fi or a monthly subscription. Solar-powered motion-activated lights are the foundation, not the decorative kind. The kind with a motion sensor angle of at least 180 degrees, a detection range of 30 feet or more, and a lumen output above 1,500. The Lightum 182 LED and the Baxia Technology solar lights both meet that threshold and retail between $18 and $26 per unit. You need a minimum of 3, 1 covering the primary approach to your front entry, 1 covering the side or rear yard access point most concealed from the street, and 1 covering whatever secondary entry, garage door, back door, gate, exists on your property. Total cost for Layer 1 lighting, $54 to $78. Add to that 2 to 4 door and window contact sensors on your primary entry points. These are not smart home devices. The version you want is a simple magnetic alarm sensor that triggers a local audible alert when the contact breaks. No hub required, no Wi-Fi dependency, battery operated. The Doberman Security SE-0106 and comparable units run $8 to $12 each. 4 of them, covering front door, back door, and the 2 most accessible ground floor windows, cost $32 to $48. The audible alert isn't for the intruder. It's for you. It's the sound that wakes you up 30 seconds before the situation becomes a confrontation. The third detection element is the one most people overlook entirely. a gravel or crushed stone path along at least one approach to your home. This is not a technology, it's physics. Gravel produces approximately 50 to 70 decibels of sound under foot pressure, audible through a closed window in a quiet nighttime environment. Security researchers have documented gravel paths as one of the oldest and most consistently effective perimeter detection tools in residential settings. Present in traditional Japanese home design as a deliberate security feature for centuries. A 50-pound bag of pea gravel costs $4 to $6 at any home improvement store. You need 3 to 4 bags for a standard perimeter path section. Total detection layer cost, $70 to $100. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, behavioral researchers studying the Lakeview neighborhood of New Orleans documented a pattern that has since been replicated in analysis of other sustained crisis events. Households that experienced no approach by opportunistic threats in the first 4 days after the storm shared a common characteristic. They had some form of perimeter detection that created noise or light before a threat reached the entry point. It wasn't the quality of their locks. It wasn't whether they were visibly armed. It was the early warning signal that caused a potential threat to self-select away from that property and toward one that offered no signal at all. Detection doesn't stop threats. It redirects them. Layer 2 is delay. If detection is what tells you something is happening, delay is what gives you the time to respond to that information. The goal of this layer is not to make your home impenetrable. That's an impossible standard and an expensive trap. The goal is to add enough time between a determined breach attempt and an actual breach that the threat either abandons the attempt or you have completed whatever response your situation requires. The most cost-effective delay investment in residential security is Dr. Frame reinforcement. Standard residential door frames are installed with short screws, typically 3/4 inch to 1 inch screws, into the door jamb. Under focused kick pressure, that frame fails in an average of 1 to 2 kicks. The Door Armor Max reinforcement kit replaces the short screws with 3-inch structural screws that anchor into the wall stud behind the jamb and adds a steel strike plate and hinge reinforcement. The kit retails for $97 to $110 and installs with a standard screwdriver in under an hour. After reinforcement, the same door frame typically requires 8 to 12 focus strikes to breach. In documented testing by security researchers at the University of Southern California's Safe Communities Institute, that additional time is the point. Layer 2 doesn't keep the threat out permanently. It keeps the threat out long enough. The secondary delay element is security window film. Standard residential glass breaks cleanly and quickly. A 4mm or 8mm safety film, 3UM safety series or BDF safety film both perform at this range. Applied to ground floor windows does not prevent the glass from breaking. It holds the broken pieces in place, maintaining a barrier even after impact, and significantly increases the force and time required to create a passable opening. A 48-inch by 15-foot roll covers 4 to 6 standard windows and costs $28 to $45. Applied to your most accessible ground floor windows, it adds a measurable delay at the precise entry points that opportunistic threats prefer. Combined door reinforcement and window film, $125 to $155. Running total through Layer 2, $195 to $255. In 2019, a home security researcher published an analysis of 86 documented residential break-in attempts across 3 cities, drawn from police incident reports and insurance claim documentation. In 58 of those 86 cases, the attempt was abandoned within 60 seconds of initiation. Not because the intruder was stopped, because the attempt was taking longer than expected. Delay, on its own, causes self-selection. It works not by defeating the threat, but by making your home the wrong cost-benefit calculation. Layer 3 is signaling. This is not a camera with a recording light. This is not a protected by ADT sticker purchased on Amazon. Those signals have been studied, and the research is consistent. Generic security signage produces minimal deterrent effect because its prevalence has made it effectively invisible. What works is specificity and evidence of active preparation. A visible motion light that activates is a signal. Gravel crunching underfoot is a signal. A door frame that doesn't flex on first contact is a signal. The next two layers are where most systems fail, and where most households, even careful ones, have left the largest gaps. Layer 4 is communication. In every major sustained crisis event of the last 30 years, the households and neighborhoods that maintained the clearest picture of what was happening around them made better decisions than those operating on rumor, assumption, and fear. Information is a resource. In a grid-down scenario, it becomes scarce at exactly the moment you need it most. Cell networks saturate and fail within hours of a major disaster. Social media goes dark with the power. The households that had built redundant communication capacity before the crisis were not operating blind. The ones that hadn't were. The tool for this layer is a battery-powered or hand-crank no-AA weather radio with alert capability. The Midland WR120B and the Kaido KA500 both receive all 7 NEO-AA weather band frequencies, include hand crank and solar charging, and retail between $30 and $45. This is your link to official emergency broadcast information when every other channel is unavailable. It requires no infrastructure to receive. It works in the dark, in the storm, with dead batteries replaced by 30 seconds of hand cranking. The second communication tool is a pair of FRS/GMRS two-way radios for local coordination. Motorola T460 or T600 series units have a functional range of 20 to 35 miles in open terrain, reduced in dense urban environments, but still adequate for neighborhood-scale communication, and retail in pairs for $35 to $50. These are not for calling for help. They are for coordinating with the 2 or 3 trusted neighbors who form the foundation of Layer 5. Combined cost for Layer 4, $65 to $95. Running total through Layer 4, $260 to $350, with room to optimize within each layer to land under $300 depending on pricing at time of purchase. Layer 5 is community. This is the layer that crisis researchers consistently rate as the single highest leverage intervention available to a household, and it is the layer that almost no one builds deliberately. It costs nothing to construct except time and intention. And in documented crisis outcomes, its presence or absence is more predictive of household security than any physical or technological measure. A 2019 analysis published in the journal Natural Hazards and Earth System Sciences, examining household outcomes across 6 distinct disaster events in the United States and Australia, found that households embedded in active local social networks, defined as having at least 3 nearby relationships involving regular communication and mutual aid agreements, experienced significantly lower rates of property crime, resource loss, and psychological deterioration during sustained disruptions than socially isolated households with comparable physical security measures. The mechanism is not complicated. A network of aware, communicating neighbors functions as a distributed detection system with human judgment. It shares real-time information about threats, resource availability, and situational changes. It creates a visible signal of collective preparedness that is itself a deterrent. And it provides the mutual aid capacity that allows households to cover each other's blind spots. Now consider what the case studies show when this layer is absent. Hurricane Katrina, 2005. In the affluent Lakeview neighborhood, households with expensive alarm systems, reinforced entries, and camera installations were burglarized at high rates once the monitoring infrastructure collapsed. In the working-class Holy Cross neighborhood of the lower Ninth Ward, A tight-knit community with minimal security technology but dense social networks maintained informal neighborhood watches, shared information across households, and experienced markedly lower rates of opportunistic crime during the first week of the crisis. The difference was not hardware. It was the human layer. Puerto Rico, 2017. During the 11-month blackout following Hurricane Maria, the longest sustained power outage in American history, researchers from the University of Puerto Rico documented that the communities maintaining the highest food security, physical safety, and psychological stability were those with pre-existing community emergency response structures, not those with the most individual household preparation. Isolated households, regardless of their supply levels, deteriorated faster. Texas, 2021. During the February freeze that left 4.5 million households without power for up to 2 weeks, the neighborhoods where neighbors had each other's phone numbers, shared generator access, and checked on one another daily reported dramatically lower rates of cold-related medical emergencies and property incidents than neighborhoods of equal income where social connection was absent. The pattern across all three events is identical. Layers 1 through 4 are individual. Layer 5 is collective. And collective, in every documented case, outperforms individual. Here is how you build the system, in order, starting today. First, deploy Layer 1. Install 3 solar motion lights covering your primary approach, side access, and secondary entry. Add 4 door window contact sensors on your main entries. Lay a gravel path section along your least visible approach. This takes 1 weekend and costs $70 to $100. Second, reinforce Layer 2. Install the Door Armor Max kit on your primary entry door. Apply 4mm or 8mm safety film to your most accessible ground floor windows. This takes 1 afternoon and adds $125 to $155. Third, verify Layer 3. Walk your property at night. Identify every approach that currently offers no light, no sound, and no visible preparation signal. Those are your gaps. Fill them before moving forward. Fourth, build Layer 4. Purchase the NOAA radio and the two-way radio pair. Store them with fresh batteries and a hand crank backup. Test them. Know which NOAA frequencies cover your region. Fifth, begin Layer 5 today. Identify 3 nearby households where a basic relationship exists. Have 1 direct conversation about mutual awareness during emergencies. Exchange a phone number. That's it. That's the beginning of the layer that outperforms everything else. If you rent or live in an apartment, Layers 1, 4, and 5 transfer completely without modification. Layer 2 has renter-compatible versions. Portable door security bars, which cost $18 to $25, and removable window film that leaves no residue. Layer 3 adapts to whatever perimeter you control. The system scales to your situation. One thing you can do in the next 10 minutes: walk your perimeter, count your entry points, push on your front door frame, notice whether it flexes. If it does, you have not built Layer 2. Notice whether any approach to your home is currently dark, quiet, and completely undifferentiated from an unprepared household. If it is, you have not built Layer 1. The system is not complicated, it is just deliberate. And deliberate in a crisis is the only thing that consistently holds.